Who is the Emperor of Mankind? The Emperor of Mankind, also referred to by the imperial cult and the imperial ecclesiarchy as the God Emperor of Mankind, is the sovereign ruler of the Imperium of Man, and father, guardian, and God of the human race. He has sat immobile within the golden throne of Terra for 10,000 years. Although once a living man, his shattered body can no longer support life, and remains intact only by a combination of ancient technology and the sheer force of his will, itself sustained by the soul sacrifice of countless millions. His will is omnipotent, extending across the million worlds that comprise his imperium. For 10,000 years, the master of mankind has served humanity, simultaneously carrying out the multitude of tasks vital to its survival. All at once, he guides his race through the Emperor's turret, soul-binds psychers, holds audiences with his most important servants, and directs the Astronomicon beacon that guides space vessels through the warp. His immense psychic powers constantly keep the chaos gods in the warp at bay, preventing their intrusion into the material universe. Guardian of mankind seems to have been predestined for him. Without the Emperor, there would be no Imperium, little space travel, and no protection from the multitude of threats facing mankind. The Emperor knows that to protect his race, he must survive as long as necessary for the emerging race of psychic humans to evolve sufficiently. In the millennia since his ascension to the Golden Throne, the Emperor has become a god to his people, the worship of him uniting humanity throughout his imperium, superstition, and dogma. Little is known about the majority of the Emperor's life, of who he was and what he did before he emerged as the great Emperor of mankind. Only the Emperor himself remembers. A few pieces of information have come to light from various different sources and present some small parts of coherent whole. However, their reliability is often disputed, especially as the Emperor's tale changes somewhat with each retelling. There is a source from first edition rogue Traitor, which details the Emperor's backstory. It is said that the Emperor's birth, while a natural process, was actually the result of a scheme created by the wisest and most powerful living humans at the time, the Conclave of Shamans. These men, turned shamans by their society, were powerful psychers with great experience of the warp. Binding their souls and those of humanity, endangered by the growing perils of the warp gods, these psychers decided to pool their power into one human, a being they called the New Man. Already having gained the power to reincarnate themselves, the shamans entered a suicide pact. They poisoned themselves and sped their souls to the warp at the same time. Presumably pulling their soul energy and using their reincarnation ability, they brought about the birth of their new man, the Emperor. This same source states that the Emperor was born to mortal parents on Terra in the 8th millennium BC, in a primitive proto-village along the banks of the Sakarya River. Manifesting his powers as a youth, while the young adolescent, the Emperor's father was murdered by his uncle. While preparing his father's body for a funeral ritual, he received a vision of his murder. Later, the boy who would become the Emperor calmly approached his uncle and stopped his heart with his psychic abilities, displaying neither sorrow nor malice. According to the Emperor himself, this was the moment he realized that humanity needed law, order, and the guidance of a ruler. Shortly after, he left his village for the first city of humanity. Sometime later, the perpetual Urda met the Emperor, already a warlord attempting to accelerate human evolution and guide the race into a superior species. Urda became one of the Emperor's followers as he attempted to seek out and recruit every perpetual on Earth to his cause. During this ancient time, the Emperor was known as Neoth. At some point before recorded history, the Emperor became a king and organized his own armies with the perpetual that would become known as Olaneus Person as his war master. Seeking to protect and guide humanity, the two friends besieged a tower in East Phoenicia built by the cult that will become known as the Cognitae. After their forces succeeded in capturing the tower, they discovered it covered in eunucia and bleeding in the corruption power of the warp. Olyneus demanded the tower destroyed, while the emperor wished to preserve the knowledge it held within in order to better protect against chaos in the future. Disillusioned with the emperor, Olyneus stabbed his king with a dagger and then uttered a line of eunucia to destroy the tower, and proceeded to haunt the history of humanity as a ghost, watching, waiting, and occasionally influencing. Living secretly amongst mankind, he developed his abilities until his psychic might allowed him to gain knowledge of not only his own world, but of the dangers beyond it. Aware then of the vast predations awaiting humanity, the being that would become known as the Emperor resolved to guide and protect humanity. The Emperor took many forms during this time. Some were brutal conquerors. Some became meek to inherit the earth. One identity of the Emperor during this time was Alexander the Great, and in an account given by Horus, it is said that he wept before the river Hyphasis when he thought there were no more worlds to conquer. Not long after, he discovered what would be named the Golden Throne. During the Dark Age of technology, Olivia Surica traveled with the man who would become the Emperor to the planet Melek, where there was a great gateway into the realm of chaos. The Emperor entered the gateway and there made a bargain with the dark gods and emerged wielding a measure of their power, including the ability to create the Primarchs. However, for some reason, the Emperor did not keep his end of the bargain to spread chaos to humanity, and he became the anathema of ruinous powers. The Emperor was able to clone the energies he was imbued with, giving them to his Primarchs, after combining his own genetic material with that of Erda's. At some point in Earth's history, the Emperor discovered an ancient device beneath the ruins of Asia's deserts and became determined to completely cut off humanity from the malignant influence of the warp. The first step of this grand project was to substitute warp travel with the webway, and the final phase would be to see the Emperor shepherd humanity's evolution into a truly powerful race independent of chaos, ascending to a level not even the Eldar were able to. This grand ambition was to guide all of the Emperor's undertakings and would be the culmination of his planning. The man who would later become known as the Emperor first appeared openly as one of the many warlords struggling for control of Terra during the latter part of the Age of Strife. He was at this point just another Terran warlord, but he met Malcador, who convinced him to take the title of Emperor. He was once known as the Master of the Lines in a mountainous region of Terra. There he would seek out individuals whose genetics he could use in his Thunder Warrior project, as well as offer services of gene editing the offspring children in the region to correct genetic mutations. It was during this time he met Amar Astarte, who he and Erda worked closely with on the Primarch project. He also met Ezekiel Sedain, who would later develop the Black Coropace for the successors of the Thunder Warriors, the Legio Astartes. The Emperor undertook a series of campaigns against all the other warlords on the planet that would later become termed as the Unification Wars. During these wars, the Emperor employed several military formations, such as the Thunder Warriors and Geno 5-2 Kiliad, that consisted of genetically altered and engineered warriors, who played a significant role in his eventual victory. With this victory, the planet and the population of Terra were at last unified under one rule, that of the Emperor. With this achievement behind him, the Emperor set in motion his plans to take his purpose of uniting and guarding mankind out into the stars, to unify with the bastions of humanity scattered across the galaxy. This undertaking would become known as the Great Crusade. The prospect of the Great Crusade and the bitter fate of the Primarchs horrified Erda, who viewed the creations as her sons. The Emperor prepared extensively for the Great Crusade. He created the special Astro-Telepath Corps to link his eventual dominion together, and caused the creation of the Astronomicon, a supremely powerful signal device powered by the Emperor's own psychic might that would allow simplified and safer travel through the warp. Chief amongst his designs, however, were the creation of the superhuman warriors, the logical extension of gene troopers already under his command. He had first undertaken the Primarch project the creation of 20 infants from his own genetic code, designed to mature into powerful generals for his armies. However, this plan went awry when the intervention of the Chaos powers. Other sources state that the Emperor's longtime colleague and fellow Perpetual Erda cast the Primarchs into the warp to deny the Emperor's plans for them. While accounts vary as to exactly what happened, the end of the tale is always the same. The Primarchs were cast into the warp and thought lost. During the tumultuous event, the Emperor's gene lab was devastated by the forces that scattered the Primarchs. He held up the collapsing underground roof with his psychic power until the Vault's workers and data could be safely evacuated. Afterwards, Malcador and Constantin Valdor believed the Primarchs dead or corrupted. However, the Emperor sensed their echoes in the warp and knew they were still alive. Malcador was surprised that the Emperor began to refer to the lost Primarchs as his sons, something Valdor saw as an ebb in his attempts to suppress his human emotions. In the aftermath of these events, the Emperor evolved a new plan. Using genetic material which had been derived from the Primarchs, he created a caste of warriors which would possess some of the qualities of the Primarchs. These successors to the genetically altered warriors of the Unification era were the Legions Astartes, the Space Marines of the first founding. After purging the Thunder Warriors and replacing them with these more efficient warriors, the Emperor led the Space Marines into the reconquest of the Sol system. He drove Xenos enslavers from the moons of Saturn and Jupiter, and most importantly, achieved peace and eventual integration with the Mechanicum of Mars. This alliance provided the Emperor with much of the means and material to extend his crusade into the stars. With the final abatement of the warp storms began the Great Crusade. The Emperor's forces rediscovered human worlds, cast out alien oppressors, and claimed new territory at plenty. Perhaps most importantly, the Emperor leading his crusade rediscovered his lost sons, the Primarchs. Scattered throughout space, the infants were found one by one over a period of many decades, and reunited with their father and their kin. All were placed in command of the Astartes legions created from their respective gene seed and played their part in forging their father's Imperium. First amongst the Primarchs was Horus, said to be the first discovered and first honored. However, a contradictory and dubious account given by Alfarius states that he was the first recovered by the Emperor, being found directly on Terra itself. Whether the truth of Horus's order of discovery, the two fought together at the forefront of the early Great Crusade. The Emperor protected Horus during the siege of Relis, while Horus repaid the favor during the Battle of Goro. During the Battle of Gyros Tharavian, the Emperor slew the mighty orc war boss Garkol Blackfang after it had held of 3 of his Primarchs. Some 200 years into the Great Crusade, the Emperor decided to return to Terra and place Horus in charge of the military advancement of his Imperium in his stead. Granting him the title of War Master after the Ulanor Crusade, the Emperor declared that the time had come for his sons to show him what great leaders they were. During his back on direct military interventions, the Emperor then created the Council of Terra, the Imperial Tithe, and expanded the civil governing bodies of the Imperium, before retiring in the seclusion beneath the Imperial Palace to begin work upon his greatest ambition, the Webway Project. At some point, the Emperor left the palace to decree the Edict of Nicaea, seize all of the Emperor's subjects, several of his sons in particular. In the final stages of the Great Crusade, the Emperor's most trusted son Horus succumbed to chaos temptation. Horus was told that the reason the Emperor had left the Great Crusade was so he could attempt to reach godhood, abandon all his sons, and betray one of the central tenets of the Great Crusade. Horus saw it as his duty to save the Imperium and turned on his father, having corrupted fully half of the Space Marine legions. Horus led them against the Emperor and plunged the fledgling galactic empire into a colossal civil war. This became the most terrible conflict in human history, and billions perished as the traitor legions were torn apart the empire they had helped to forge. The Emperor's son Magnus attempted to warn his father of the coming slaughter, but his telepathic message breached the Emperor's psychic wardings at the Imperial Palace and caused a grievous malfunction of the Golden Throne. Distraught, the Emperor then dispatched the Space Wolves under Leman Russ to bring back Magnus before him in chains. However, the now corrupted Horus intercepted the Emperor's order and changed it, instead ordering the 1,000 Suns destroyed. For the rest of the heresy, the emperor was forced to deal with the Golden Throne's malfunction, which created a warp breach in the depths of the imperial palace. As demons flooded through the breach, the custodian guard and Sisters of Silence held them at bay, while the emperor punishingly exerted himself on the Golden Throne to prevent all of Terra itself from being swallowed. With his intentions turned to this crisis, the emperor left management of Horus's rebellion to Malcador and Rogel Dorn. During this sad state of affairs, the emperor engaged in telepathic communications with a lowly astropath, Kai Zulene, who had been given a vision of the heresy's conclusion. During their psychic communiques, the emperor revealed he not only already knew his ultimate fate, but had accepted it. Later, Corax, distraught over the disaster at Isfahan V, arrived at the emperor's palace and demanded audience with the emperor. Diverting some of his attention to the strenuous task of maintaining the Golden Throne, the emperor psychically imbued part of the secrets of creating Astartes into his son's mind. Thus, Corax was able to begin rebuilding the Raven Guard. After 5 years of maintaining the stability of Magnus's webway breach on the Golden Throne, the emperor began to exhibit physical fatigue. He finally began to show signs of exhaustion, and his nose would bleed, even in the telepathic visions he sent to his custodian tribune, Ray Adamian. After sensing the birth of the powerful demon Draconade, the emperor knew the war in the webway was reaching its climax, and the fate of mankind would soon be decided. He ordered the Sisters of Silence to gather 1,000 psychers across the galaxy and sacrifice them to the Golden Throne. This allowed the throne to be powered for a single day without the emperor's presence, and he used that time to plunge into the webway and rescue the retreating imperial forces. After sweeping aside the demonic hordes, he confronted Dracnian and sealed it into the body of Ra Adamian, telling him to run as far as he could into the depths of the webway in order to keep humanity safe from its influence. Afterwards, the emperor was forced to seal the webway portal on Terra by again becoming a prisoner to the Golden Throne. The emperor lamented that his great work was ruined and maintained that now the webway project had failed. Humanity was ultimately doomed. Horus would be defeated by his hands, but someone else would take his place. To the shock of his custodian, Diocletian, the emperor declared the Imperium ultimately doomed. But in a year or 10,000, and for the first time admitted he did not know, the emperor appeared before the 9 chosen champions of Malcador's knights. The master of mankind stated that while his original Space Marines are built to wage war on the material, these new chosen must build a new order to wage war against the immaterial. Their fight against Horus was over, and their mission to come would nonetheless be necessary for the survival of humanity. The emperor revealed he was initially hesitant to fight against these forces directly, seeking instead to contain it. However, Malcador was eventually able to convince him that direct action was needed. After telling them of their role, the emperor bid them farewell as Malcador's confident Ael Wentor created a portal to Titan. As Horus besieged the Sol system in the Materium, so did the ruinous powers assail the Imperium in the Immaterium. The emperor alone held back the tides of the warp from the Sol system during the struggles. He often took the form of a prehistoric, weary old man in a fur coat huddled over a dying fire. As Horus finally arrived in the Sol system, he appeared to the emperor as a feral wolf, goaded the emperor in declaring him a tyrant and liar. The emperor refused to even respond to Horus in these exchanges, looking past him to instead announce his rejection of the ruinous powers and declaring their puppet as nothing. As the embers of fire died, the shadows around him drew closer and closer. As Horus arrived directly over Terra, the fire finally died, and Horus gloated that the only option left for his father was to run. In the early stages of the siege of Terra, the emperor was confined to the throne, maintaining a psychic barrier that kept demons from manifesting on Terra. The barrier was so strong that even the demon Primarchs were unable to penetrate it. The traitors were eventually able to overcome the barrier through a warp ritual involving the mass sacrifice of lives on Terra, though even then its remaining power kept the likes of Angron from being able to fly past the walls of the Imperial Palace. During the siege, the emperor deliberately allowed Magnus the Red to infiltrate the imperial palace. Deep inside the imperial dungeon, a projection of the emperor dubbed Revelation confronted Magnus and his men in the Hall of Victories. Revelation led them to the throne room, where Magnus came before the emperor on the golden throne. Determined to go through with his vow to slay his father, Magnus obliterated the projection of Revelation and powered up his staff to deliver a killing blow to the emperor upon the golden throne. However, before he could carry through with the act, he was blocked by Vulcan as his 1,000 sons engaged in battle with Vulcan's Drakeward and Bajarki's pack. The emperor's eyes suddenly opened, and Magnus found himself floating through the ether with his father and witnessing the rise and fall of the galaxy's many empires. The emperor showed Magnus a future where the Primarchs never turned against the Imperium, and the last world in the galaxy was conquered in the name of mankind. In this future, Magnus sat upon the golden throne to power the Imperial webway, but his soul was in a perpetual bliss as it drifted in the Immaterium along the emperor to discover the limits of cosmic knowledge. The emperor stated that this future may yet happen, and Magnus could return to the loyalist side at the head of the new legion being prepared for him. Together, the emperor and Magnus would expel the traitors from Terra and undertake the Great Scoring. However, the price was steep, for the emperor declared the 1,000 sons damned due to rampant flesh change. They could not allow Magnus back into the emperor's embrace and would need to be purged. This price was too much for Magnus to bear, and he again struck at the emperor, but found himself in battle with Vulcan, who eventually managed to chase the Crimson King from the throne room. Mere hours after Sanguinius made his heroic stand at the Eternity Gate and Rogaldorn's own command center fell to traitor forces, Horus mysteriously lured the Void Shields to his own flagship, the Vengeful Spirit. Malcador soon told the Emperor of this development, finally rousing the master of mankind. The Emperor gathered his remaining loyal generals to him, Sanguinius, Dorn, Vulcan, and Valdar, and again all of their objections announced his plans to teleport to the Vengeful Spirit and end his treacherous son once and for all. However, Vulcan was to stay behind and oversee the failsafe on the Golden Throne, while Sanguinius would stay behind to lead the Loyalist armies on Terra. However, the Blood Angel's Primarch refused to obey this order, confront his father as he donned his golden armor. Sanguinius finally told the Emperor of his prophetic death at Horus's hands and his intention to defy fate by defeating his treacherous brother instead. This was enough to move the Emperor to change his mind, as he had sought to change his own fate many times in the past. Unknown to the Loyalist, but already discovered by Horus, Guilliman's reinforced Operation Anabasis. Horus used his abilities to scatter the attackers throughout the Vengeful Spirit. The Emperor and his custodies appeared in a seemingly ordinary hangar until Horus used his dark powers to take control of many of the companions. Blood flowing from their eyes and screaming at the effort to maintain control, dozens of the Emperor's own bodyguards attacked their liege lord. The Emperor, reluctant, slew dozens of custodies before the madness passed, and he was able to cleanse the lingering taint from his companions. The Emperor and his custodians then found themselves in the midst of hell, with many of the warriors falling into demonic traps until the Emperor unleashed the same psychic fire he had stolen from the gods of chaos to cleanse them. Horus revealed that he had held back the full measure of his strength in order to draw the Emperor in, but the Master of Mankind was undeterred by the madness unleashed on the Vengeful Spirit and announced that he was to bring death to Horus. After a tragic battle, and though heartbroken at the loss of his favorite son and death to Sanguinius at his hands, the Emperor finally slew Horus. However, the struggle had left him close to death. In this state, he was found by Rogaldorn. The dying Emperor dictated plans for the arcane life support machine that would sustain his remaining cells for over 10,000 years, and he was subsequently interred in this altered version of the Golden Throne. Hello, everyone. I just wanted to take the time to say that I apologize for my hiatus. I know I haven't posted on the channel in a long time. It's just that I've been working on a lot of projects as of late, projects that I look forward to sharing with you all, and I just want to apologize for my hiatus. And I also just want to say thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for your continued support and for continuing to follow my channel and for continuing to watch my videos. It's really greatly appreciated. And I do appreciate all of your feedback as well. And I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I just really, really appreciate all of your love and continued support. This is your boy, Travis J, and I'm out. Peace.